So, a single cell is giving rise to a multicellular organism, right? A seed is giving rise to the whole tree. My previous class was all about the cell division. Now I guess all of you have a little bit of idea what the cell division is. Hi, this is Shoma Chakraborty and welcome all the listeners to my classroom, which is Shoma's classroom. So today the topic I considered quite importance of, that is cell cycle. To know about the cell division in details, we need to know about the cell cycle first. So today my topic is cell cycle. You know what a cycle means? A cycle is actually, I'm not talking about the cycle which we ride to go from one place to the another place. I'm talking about a cycle. For example, a life cycle, a sale cycle. A cycle means a series of events which occurs in a sequence of order and time. Cycle means a series of events. For example, what a life cycle means. From birth to death, we are going through different stages from a baby to an adult or to an old person. We are going through the different stages. After that, after few stages, we are called dead. So this is how the life cycle continues, right? So a cycle means a series of events. Now what a cell cycle means? A cell cycle means that a series of events in which a cell divides itself, replicates itself, duplicates its own organelles and components, its own genome, ultimately leads to the production of its own individual or the daughter cells. So cell cycle is all about a series of events which is occurred in a particular sequence of time and order, which ultimately leads to the production of the individual or the daughter cells. So this is all about the cell cycle. Now we need to know the two persons who first introduced the cell cycle to us. Howard and Pelk. Howard and Pelk, the two persons in 1953 first denoted the term cell cycle to us. They denoted the cell cycle into two phases. Now, what are the phases? The phases are: number one is the interphase. And number two is the M phase. Interphase and M phase. In my previous class, I have already discussed about in brief the M phase, which is the divisional phase, where the cell undergoes the divisional phases to produce the daughter cells. This is all about the M phase. Today we are going to discuss about the interphase. You know what? Whenever we are going to give an examination, we need to prepare ourselves. We need to assemble all kinds of materials that are required to give the examination, right? Just similarly, the cell also needs itself to be prepared to go for the cell division. Here, inter means something, the phase which is in between the two phases, right? So, interphase is the phase where the cell prepares itself to go for the cell division. This is all about the interphase. Now, I am going to give you an outline of the whole cell cycle. Now, just think about how the cell cycle occurs. If we divide these whole portions into 3 parts, this total part, if we suppose the total part is dividing stage, then we can divide this part into 5 phases, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this part is all about the mitotic phase, which is the divisional phase, which consists of prophase, metaphase, anaphase and telophase, which I have already discussed in my previous class. Prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, this is all about the karyokinesis, that means the divisional stages, and the next stage is cytokinesis. Cytokinesis, which is the division of cytoplasm. This is all about the dividing stages or divisional stages. Now, we will be talking about the interphase, which is the preparatory phase, where the cell prepares itself to go for the further cell division. So, if it is interphase, then what are the phases it is consisted of? The 3 phases are: number 1 is the G1 phase, that is gap phase or first growth phase. Okay, this is the G1 phase, that is the gap phase or the first growth phase. Now the second phase, the interphase is consisted of, is the S phase or synthetic phase. We will be discussing these phases in details later. Now I am just giving an outline to know about how the cell cycle occurs. And the last one is the G2 phase, that is second growth phase or gap 2 phase. Okay, so this is all about the cell cycle. This is an outline of the cell cycle, how the cell cycle occurs and how much part the interphase takes, how much part the dividing stages take of the cell cycle. So if this is a complete cell cycle, then it is divided into 2 stages. One is the interphase, another is the dividing stage. Okay, so in case of dividing stage, it is divided into 2 phases. One is the karyokinesis, this total part, it is the karyokinesis, that is the nucleus division. Karyokinesis, and this part is the cytokinesis. This is the cytokinesis, okay? And the rest part, it is all about the interphase, which is consisted of these 3 phases. One is the G1 phase. Second is the S phase. And third one is the G2 G1 phase is called the primary growth phase. This is all. Next phase is called the synthetic phase. And third one is the second growth phase. Okay, this is all about the cell cycle, which I have presented in an outline. So now I am going to discuss about these three phases in details. So first thing, we need to know about what happens during the G1 phase or gap phase. G1 phase is also called post-mitotic phase. Do you know why post-mitotic phase? Just think about the two terminal exams happen in one session or one standard, right? First terminal exam, second terminal exam. Okay? So after first terminal examination, we need to prepare ourselves to go further for the second terminal examination. And we take some time to get prepared for ourselves to go for the further cell division, right? Or sorry, to go for the further second terminal examination. Just like that, the interphase stage, what is the interphase stage? It happens between the two divisional phases. First mitotic phase and the second mitotic phase. Just think about this, the first terminal exam, this is the second terminal exam. First mitotic phase, second mitotic phase. So after first mitotic phase, what phase comes? That is the G1 phase. After it happens after the mitotic phase, that is why it is called the post-mitotic phase. So now what happens during the G1 phase? What happens? Growth phase. Why it is called the growth phase? Because it is the phase where cell prepares all kinds of materials or all kinds of components to synthesize the materials which are required for the cell division. For example, in this phase, the centrioles divide. The centriole divide in this phase. First one, what happens? Centrioles divide in this phase. Okay. Second one, what happens? DNA synthesis doesn't occur in this phase. In this phase, DNA synthesis doesn't occur, but the enzyme responsible for the DNA synthesis is synthesized. What is the enzyme required for the DNA synthesis? DNA polymerase. DNA polymerase is synthesized in this phase. Third one, what happens in this phase? That is all kinds of necessary material, for example, RNA, proteins, ATP. You know what is ATP? ATP is the form of energy which is required for the cell division. These kinds of materials are synthesized or are produced in this first growth phase or G1 phase or gap phase or post-mitotic phase. Now we will be discussing about the second phase, which is the synthetic phase. Now from the name you can understand that what kind of phase it is. Synthetic phase or S phase. So from the name you can have some idea that what kind of phase it is. So in this phase all kinds of synthesis occurs. Cell duplicates its own genome. Cell duplicates its own genome. That means DNA synthesis occurs. DNA synthesis occurs with the help of the enzyme DNA polymerase. And the third one is histone proteins. Histone proteins are also synthesized. Histone proteins are synthesized in this phase. Okay? And all kinds of necessary materials which are required for the cell division are synthesized in this phase. All kinds of synthesis occurs in this synthetic phase. Next phase is the last one, which is G2 phase. Which is the G2 phase? G2 phase or gap 2 phase or pre-mitotic phase, as it is the last division before the beginning of the second mitotic division. So that is why just because it happens before the mitotic division, so it is called the pre-mitotic stage or pre-mitotic phase. Now what happens during this G2 phase? The genomic separation occurs. The genomic separation occurs in this phase. Genomic separation occurs in this phase. In this phase, cell replicates its organelles. What are the organelles? For example, mitochondria, Golgi body. All kinds of organelles are replicated in these phases by cell. Third one, chromosomes become condensed. Chromosome become condensed in this phase. Okay. Chromosome condensation occurs. So this is what about the G2 phase or the gap 2 phase or the pre-mitotic phase. So these are the three phases mainly which the interphase is consisted of. So now you can understand that what is the interphase. Interphase is a preparatory phase where the cell prepares itself to go for the further division. It directs the cell whether it is able to go for the further division or not. There is another stage which is called the G0 stage. G0 stage or quiescent stage. Quiescent stage. You know what is the meaning of quiescent? Quiescent means the dormant. That means something remains in the resting stage, where the cell remains metabolically active. They perform few kinds of functions like the secretion, attacking pathogens. These kinds of functions they perform, but this is called the resting stage or the quiescent stage, where the cell leaves the cell cycle in the G1 stage. They leave the cell cycle G1 stage, and where the cell is directed whether the cells are allowed to go for the further division or not. This is the G0 stage. I have already mentioned you there are few cells which do not undergo any kind of cell division and continues their life cycle without undergoing any kind of cell division. For example, nerve cells or matured RBC cells. They do not undergo any kind of cell division. They instead of undergoing any kind of cell, they continue their life cycle. So G0 stage is the stage where the cells become arrested and they are directed towards a further cell division if they are eligible to go for the further cell division. So this is all about the G0 stage. But in case of other cells which are capable of going for the further cell division, they are allowed to re-enter the cell division further. So G0 stage is the stage which directs the cell whether they are able to go for the further division or not. Okay. And this is all about the cell cycle stages or the interphase stage. So now you can have a brief idea what is the interphase and how the cell cycle occurs. So what happens during the interphase? In the interphase, all kinds of materials are synthesized or replicated, duplicated, and formed whatever the cell requires to go for this further division. It is a preparatory stage from the one mitotic cell division towards the next mitotic cell division. Just think, and now what the time it takes, interphase takes, most which is quite interesting thing. I need to tell you that. Just think about, we need few hours, right? Few hours to give an examination. But for the preparation, we need days after days, months after months to prepare ourselves to go for the examination. Just similarly, the cell needs just 1 hour, just 1 hour to divide itself to produce the daughter cells. But it needs 10 to 20 hours for preparation of its own to go for the further division, to go for the cell division, which ultimately leads to the production of the new individual. So the interphase takes 10 to 20 hours, and the divisional phases take only 1 hour to complete the cell cycle. So this is all about today, the cell cycle. And in the next class, we will be discussing about how the cell is controlled, whether it is able to go for the further cell division or not. Thanks all of you for watching, all the listeners and all the students who are welcome to my class, and thank you all of you for watching this video. If you have any queries, you feel free to ask me. Thank you so much.